So today we are discussing the physiology review on modeling and remodeling of bone. Okay, so many people think that bone is a rigid and inert structure, while in reality, bone is one of the most dynamic tissue in the human body. You know that nearly 10% of the adult skeleton is replaced every year through continuous process of bone modeling and remodeling. These processes are essential for the skeletal growth, repair of micro damages, adaptations to mechanical stress, and the maintenance of calcium homeostasis. So when this balance is disrupted, diseases such as osteoporosis, osteomalacia, they all can develop. So bone is a living tissue and it's composed of specialized cells that can continuously modify bone structure, and two major physiological processes regulate this dynamic behavior, and that include the bone modeling and the bone remodeling. Although these processes involve the same cells, but they serve different physiological purpose. So coming to the learning outcomes, at the end of this lecture, you all should be able to describe the structure and composition of bone. You should be able to discuss various bone cells and their functions. You should be able to briefly explain the process of resorption and mineralization. You should be able to explain the process of bone modeling and remodeling and evaluate the role of various hormones on the bone modeling and remodeling. Okay, so what is bone? Bone is a specialized rigid connective tissue that is composed of cells that are embedded in a mineralized extracellular matrix. This is the by far the most simplest definition of the bone. Okay, the specialized rigid connective tissue that is composed of various bone cells that are embedded in a mineralized extracellular matrix. Now coming to the type of bones, you know that there are two types of bones, the cortical and the trabecular bone. The cortical bone is also known as the compact bone, and it's the denser outer shell of the bone, and it's responsible for the provision of mechanical strength. While what is trabecular bone, it's also known as spongy bone. It's the porous internal network with high metabolic activity, and this is the site where most remodeling occurs very fast. You can see here in the picture as well that we have the spongy bone and the compact bone, and the difference is very much clear. Now coming to the bone surface, it's very important that you should know that external surface of the bone is divided into three main layers. Number one is the periosteal surface. This is the outer surface of the bone. Inside, you will find the endoosteal or the endocortical surface, and inside that, you will find the trabecular surface or the surface of the spongy bone. These surfaces are very important because all the process of modeling and remodeling primarily occur on these surfaces. Now coming to the bone composition, it's very easy to recall that bone tissue comprises of the non-mineralized matrix that is also known as osteoid, mineralized matrix that include the bone salt, a little amount of water, lipids, and the cellular component. The cellular component include the stem cells, that is the osteoprogenitor cells, osteoblasts, that are the bone forming cells, osteocytes. These are actually the osteoblasts that are entrapped in the mineralized bone matrix they lay down. The fourth one is the osteoclasts. They are also known as bone resorbing cells. And the last is the stromal cells. The stromal cells actually form the supporting cells of the bone. Now let us discuss each one by one. First, coming to the osteoid or the non-mineralized matrix organic component of the bone. It has two main components, right? It's composed of the collagen fibers, comprises of approximately 90 to 95% of the whole structure, and 5 to 10% of the ground substance. It's very important that you should be knowing that mainly type 1 collagen fiber and a few or the small amount of type 5 collagen fibers are present in the bone. These fibers are arranged along the lines of mechanical stress, and they are responsible for the tensile strength and flexibility. Remember, there are two types of strength that are supported by the bone. Number one is the tensile strength that is provided by the collagen fiber. Another is the compression strength that is provided by the mineralized component of the bone. Okay, apart from collagen fiber, you will also find ground substance in the bone matrix. This is actually a gel-like extracellular matrix that is composed of proteoglycans, glycosaminoglycans, for example, chondroitin sulfate, hyaluronic acid, and certain bone proteins like osteocalcin and osteopontin. The main function of the ground substance is that it binds water and calcium ions and is responsible for the control and the regulation of the crystal growth and the uh, mineral deposition as well. Okay. Now coming to the mineralized matrix or bone salts. The major crystalline salt in the bone is also known as hydroxyapatite, and you will find the chemical formula as Ca10, PO4, 6, and OH2. Okay, so what's the main crystalline salt? It's the hydroxyapatite, and it's composed of the calcium and phosphate in a ratio of 1.3 to 2. They're all deposited along and within the collagen fibers. You know, collagen fibers have small gaps in between them. They are known as hole zones in their structures. So calcium and phosphate ion they accumulate in these spaces, which later crystallizes. Each crystal is shaped like a long, flat plate. Magnesium, sodium, potassium, carbonate ion, they're also present among the bone salt, but it's very important to remember they are not responsible for the formation of definitive crystals, but they are conjugated to that hydroxyapatite crystals. So crystal salts provide compression strength to the bone. In this picture, you can see here the picture or the image that is enclosed by the blue border. You will find that they are the different collagen molecules. And in between collagen molecules, you will find small, spaces or hole zones. These hole zones are actually responsible for the accumulation of the bone minerals inside or in between these collagen fibers. Okay. So this is the structure. Above you will find the structure of the hydroxyapatite crystals. As we have talked about the mineralization, it's very important that you should be knowing that there are two types of mineralization, the primary mineralization and the secondary mineralization. In the primary mineralization, you should be knowing that after the osteoblast, it produces osteoids. Minerals start depositing in two stages, the primary and the secondary. In the primary, there is rapid initial deposition of hydroxyapatite crystals in the newly formed osteoid. It begins within a few days after the osteoid formation, and it's responsible for the provision of 60 to 70% of the final mineral content. It converts osteoid into a newly mineralized bone. While what is the function of secondary mineralization? It's a slow progressive increase in the mineral deposition after the primary mineralization. It occurs over weeks to months, and it gradually increases the bone density and mechanical strength. Okay, so is this point clear to you all? What is the composition of the bone? It includes the osteoid matrix and the non-osteoid matrix. And what are the stages of mineralization? Is this all clear? Okay. So it's also important that you should be knowing that how many cell types are present in the bone. So you should be knowing that there are four important types. Number one is the osteoprogenitor cells. They are nothing but these are the stem cells of the bone, and they are derived from the mesenchymal stem cells. They are found primarily in the periosteum and the endosteum, and they are responsible to differentiate into osteoblasts whenever there is bone growth and repair. The second cell type is the osteoblast. They comprises of approximately 4 to 6% of the total cells. They are the actual bone forming cells. When someone asks you name the cells that are responsible for the bone formation, so your answer should be osteoblast. Okay. Acha. They produce type 1 collagen fibers and different bone proteins like we have discussed, like osteocalcin, the osteopontin, osteonectin. There are several bone silo proteins, cytokines like tumor growth factor, insulin-like growth factor, fibroblast growth factor, and platelet-derived growth factor. It is responsible for the initiation of mineralization because it contains different type of vesicles that are rich in alkaline phosphatase. So some osteoblasts, what is the fate? If someone asks you what is the fate of these osteoblasts after they have performed their function, so some osteoblasts they are converted into osteocyte because they are being embedded in the bone matrix. Other may become inactive and other undergone apoptosis after their function. So it's very important that you should be knowing that what is the fate of the osteoblast after they have performed their function. Again, I'm repeating, some osteoblasts, they become osteocytes, other become inactive and remain as such, and the other undergone apoptosis after their function. Now coming to the third cell type, that is osteocyte, and they are comprising of approximately 90% of the total cell lineages. They are the mature bone cells and they are derived from the osteoblast. Okay, they are located in the lacunae within the bone matrix. They maintain bone tissue and they are also important because they act as a mechanosensors. These are responsible for the detection of mechanical stress and they regulate bone remodeling. They communicate with each other through bone canaliculi. Okay, and the last option, the last cells we are having are the osteoclasts. They comprises only about 1 to 2% of the total cells. They are the large multinucleated cells, just like a large multinucleated giant cells and the large macrophages, and they are responsible for bone resorption. They're derived from the monocyte macrophage lineage. They contain vesicle, lysosome, and vacuoles. They break down bone by release of hydrogen ions and certain proteolytic enzymes. They create a resorption pit, okay, that are known as Hoship lacunae. So if someone asks you which bone cells are responsible for the creation of house-shaped lacunae, they are osteoclast and they are nothing but they are actually the resorption pits that are produced by osteoclast. Now, can you see this image? These cells are actually the osteoblast. You can see here as they are moving over the surface of the bone, they are producing osteoid. Okay, so these cells are known as osteoblast. And here you will find the osteoclast. Wherever the osteoclast move over the surface of the bone, they causes demineralization, they remove the organic material. In this way, they causes the bone resorption. And in the last, you will find that the osteoblasts they are embedded in the bone surface and these cells now turn into osteocytes. And if someone asks you which cell is the most common, so your answer should be osteocytes. Okay, so osteocytes are the most common bone cells, followed by osteoblast and then osteoclast, and sometime we are having also the osteoprogenitor cells. Now, another important concept is about the bone resorption. Okay, so as you know that bone resorption is initiated by osteoclast. So when the osteoclasts are activated, they are attached to the bone surface and they form a small sealed resorption area. That resorption area is known as Hoship lacunae. So bone resorption occur in two main steps. Number one is the dissolution of the mineralized matrix. The second is the degradation of the organic matrix. Okay, so what happens in the dissolution of the mineralized matrix? Osteoclasts, they acidify the resorption lacunae up to a pH of 4.5. Okay, they are going to release carbonic anhydrase that generate hydrogen ion from the carbon dioxide and the water. So vacuolar hydrogen ATPase pump, they transport hydrogen into the lacunae. So in short, there is no need to remember all these things, but remember that in the presence of an acidic medium, the osteoclast, they dissolute the mineralized matrix first And then there is degradation of the organic matrix in the presence of cathepsin K and matrix metalloproteinases. Okay, is this clear? So bone resorption is done by the osteoclast. It takes two stage. It's a two-step process. The first is the dissolution of the mineralized matrix, and the second is the organic matrix degradation. Now you can see here that these purplish cells are osteoclast, and here in the lighter pink area you will find that they are attached to the surface of the bone. Okay, so wherever they are going to attach to the surface of the bone, they produce specialized membranes. You can see here, and these specialized membrane are known as ruffle border. So these ruffle border, they invaginate into the bone surface, and here is the site of release of acid and enzyme. Okay, when the ruffle border, they are actually, enclose that bone surface, they form a sealing zone. The sealing zone is there, so ruffle border, they are surrounding the whole area, and then the enzymes and the acids, they are going to release, and then the process of bone resorption starts. Okay, after understanding the composition and the major bone cells and their functions, we can now come to the physiological process that are involved throughout this process, and in which these cells modify the bone structure. The first of this is the bone modeling, and then we will discuss about the bone remodeling. Okay, so what is bone modeling? Bone modeling is nothing but it's the process in which bone formation by osteoblast or bone resorption by osteoclasts occur independently on different bone surfaces without the tight coupling seen in bone remodeling. Okay, so remember that in the bone modeling, you will find the area of bone formation as well as bone resorption at different surface of the bone, and they are not connected with each other. They are doing their work independently, and there is no tight coupling in between the bone structure, right? So bone formation can occur without prior resorption, or bone may be removed independently by osteoclast. So this process is responsible for the changing the size and shape of the bones, and it allows the skeleton to adapt to the mechanical loading, right? And the specialized site where modeling occurs, as we have discussed before, they are the subperiosteal, endocortical, and the trabecular bone surface where this bone modeling is taking place. Okay, Ji, I'm taking your attendance at this moment, but remember, I'm going to take this attendance again just before the end of this lecture, okay? So, what's the function of this bone modeling? The major function of the bone modeling is that it's very important during skeletal growth, and it continue to happen at a lower level throughout the life. It's essential for the longitudinal growth of the bone. It increases the bone length, especially it increases the activity at the epiphyseal growth plate. It's important in the radial growth of the bone, means the bone diameter is increased by the process of modeling and the cortical thickness is increased. Bone drift. Bone drift means the gradual reshaping and repositioning of the bones during growth. Sometimes you have seen that the patients are suffered with the fractures or accident of the bones, and there are small gaps. So these gaps are, filled with the bone modeling, the process of bone modeling. So that's why this process is very important. Now coming to the bone remodeling. So bone remodeling, beta, it's the continuous process in which the old or the damaged bones are resolved by the osteoclast, and then they are replaced by the new bone formation by the osteoblast within a specialized structure called the basic multicellular unit. Okay, so this is the main difference between the modeling and the remodeling here, because you can see here that in the bone remodeling, initially, the old or the damaged bone is removed by the osteoclast, and then the osteoblast, they are responsible for the production of the new bone. While in the bone modeling, what was happening? The process are taking simultaneously or independently with each other. Means at some area you will find bone resorption, and the other area you can also find bone production. But here in the bone remodeling, this is a continuous process in which the first old and damaged bone is removed. Later on, osteoblasts are responsible for the formation of the new bones, and this all is taking place at a specialized structure that is known as basic multicellular unit. So during remodeling, they are tightly coupled and ensure that there is no net change in the bone mass or bone quality after each remodeling cycle. So this thing is very important. Are you clear about the two? Are you clear about the differences in the bone modeling and remodeling? Okay, very good. If you have any query or question, you can ask in the chat box. Now, what is the importance of bone remodeling? It's important for the structural adaptation. For example, it adjusts bone architecture and strength to meet the changing mechanical demands of the body. For example, if someone is continuously having taking a mechanical load when someone is in the growth state or physical activity, this bone remodeling is responsible for the repair of micro damages. For example, there are micro cracks, damaged bone matrix. So old is removed and later on it's recycled by the new bone. It's also important for the calcium homeostasis. Bone remodeling helps to maintain the plasma calcium and the phosphate levels. It acts as a major mineral reservoir of the body. You may be asked that what are the four phases of bone remodeling? So they are very easy. The first phase is the initiation or activation at a specific site. Okay, so osteoclast precursor, they are recruited to the bone remodeling compartment. Okay, so there is a specific area on the brain, on the bone which require this remodeling. There is the activation of the osteoclasts that are present here, and they're going to form a bone remodeling compartment. Later on, what happens? The bone resorptions by the osteoclast takes place, and there are different type of osteoprogenitor cells. They will come into this bone remodeling compartment to increase the number of osteoclasts as well as to form the osteoblast. The phase three is the osteoblastic differentiation and function. Whatever the bone that has been replaced or removed in the phase two, the new bone is produced, or simply you can say the osteoid is produced by the osteoblast in the same area, in the same hole. Okay. And in the last, mineralization of the osteoid has been taking place and the process of bone remodeling is completed. Okay. So it's very easy. The bone remodeling takes place in four overlapping phases. Number one is the initiation and activation at a specific site. Here, the major role of osteoclast is there. In the phase two, there's the bone resorption. Again, you will find the major role of osteoclast here. In the phase three, there is osteoblastic differentiation, and they're responsible for the production of the osteoid, which is later mineralized, and thus completing the process of bone modeling. Sorry, remodeling. You will find also other terms, for example, RANK and RANKL and OPG system in bone remodeling. Although you will not be asked directly in physiology, but it's very important that you should be knowing the basic molecular things. So what is RANK and RNKL? The RNKL and OPG pathway is actually the key regulatory mechanism that are responsible for controlling the osteoclast formation and activity during bone remodeling. Okay, so first we are going to discuss RNAK. So RNAK is nothing but the abbreviation of the receptor activator of nuclear factor KB. Okay. And whenever the ligand is going to bind with this receptor activator, it stimulates osteoclast differentiation, its activation and survival. Whereas RNAK ligand, it's produced mainly by the osteoblast and the stromal cells. It binds to RNAK receptors on the osteoclast precursors, and they are responsible for the promotion of osteoclast formation and bone resorption. I'm repeating again that RANK and RNK ligand and OPG system are very important system in the bone remodeling. Receptor activator of nuclear factor is actually a receptor that is located on the osteoclast precursor, and they are responsible for the differentiation of the osteoclast, their activation and survival. Means whenever the RANK receptor is activated, it will lead to the formation of osteoclast that will ultimately causes the bone resorption. And its ligand is produced by the osteoblast and the stromal cells. So whenever they are going to bind with the receptor on the osteoclast precursor, they enhances the osteoclast formation and bone resorption. Is this thing clear? Okay. So next is the osteoproteograin, OPG. Osteoproteograin is nothing but the soluble decoy receptor that is produced by the osteoblast. Remember, OPG is produced by the osteoblast. It binds RNAKL ligand and prevent it from interacting with the RNAK, and thus it inhibits the osteoclast formation and bone resorption. So osteoproteograin, they works opposite to the RNAK ligand. Now coming to the different topic that is related with the modeling and remodeling of the bone, we have a role of hormones. So these hormones regulate bone remodeling mainly by influencing the balance between the bone resorption by osteoclast and the bone formation by osteoblast. So if someone asks you what are the main important hormones responsible for modeling and remodeling, your answer is very clear. They include parathyroid hormone, vitamin D, growth hormone, steroids, calcitonin, estrogen, and there are other soluble cytokines and growth factors that are ultimately going to affect this process. The first is the parathyroid hormone. Parathyroid hormone, they stimulate osteoblast to increase RANKL expression. So when this is activated, it enhances osteoclast differentiation and activity. So the final result is increase in the bone resorption and release of calcium. Additional effect of parathyroid hormone include increased renal calcium reabsorption and increased activation of the vitamin D3. So net effect is to increase serum calcium. So if someone asks you what is the function of parathyroid hormone, they are responsible for increased bone resorption and release of calcium from bone because they are going to stimulate the osteoblast to secrete RANK ligand, which ultimately causes osteoclast differentiation and bone resorption. So if there is continuous release of parathyroid hormone, it will lead to bone loss. But if it is given as an intermittent administration, has been seen to stimulate the bone formation. Now coming to vitamin D3, the major function of vitamin D3 is that it increases intestinal calcium absorption and increases phosphate absorption. It stimulates osteoblast production of RANKL and it promotes osteoclast differentiation indirectly. It also increases osteocalcin and osteopontin production. Remember, these are the bone proteins. Ultimately, they are responsible for the normal bone mineralization and the growth. If the vitamin D is deficient, you all know it will lead to ricket in the children and osteomalacia in the adult. Coming to calcitonin, main action of calcitonin on the bone is that it binds on osteoclasts. Osteoclasts have certain receptors for calcitonin. It will bind to those receptors and it is going to inhibit osteoclast activity. Remember, this is the first hormone that we have studied so far that is going to inhibit the osteoclastic activity. Thus, it is going to reduce the bone resorption. Okay. So physiological importance, minor, it has very minor role in adult calcium homeostasis. It's sometimes used in the treatment of osteoporosis, Pegger disease, and hypercalcemia because of its action of decreasing osteoclastic activity. Now coming to the estrogen. Estrogen is a major regulator of bone turnover. It decreases the expression of RANKL and it increases the expression of osteoproteograin. It decreases osteoclast formation, it increases osteoclast apoptosis, and it decreases inflammatory cytokines. So it's just function like the calcitonin because it's decreasing the bone resorption. Okay, so net effect, reduce bone resorption, and it's responsible for the maintenance of bone. So whenever estrogen deficiency is there, especially in the postmenopausal women, there is increased chance of osteoporosis in these women because estrogen is no longer there or it's very low in amount. So that osteoclast formation, apoptosis, they're all decreased. Now coming to the growth hormone. So growth hormone is responsible for the stimulation of osteoblast proliferation as well as their activity. It's responsible for the production of this bone formation through insulin like growth factor 1. It stimulates also the osteoclastic bone resorption activity. So means it's going to activate both osteoblast as well as osteoclast, while the cumulative net effect of this dual activity favors bone formation. Remember, parathyroid hormone, vitamin D3, they are all going to increase the osteoclastic activity, while estrogen and the calcitonin, they are going to increase the bone formation by inhibition of osteoclastic activity and increase osteoblastic activity. While growth hormone has dual effect, but the net effect favors bone formation. Now, this is very important, the role of glucocorticoids. Glucocorticoids are often given to reduce inflammation in various type of diseases, right? So, glucocorticoid, they increases osteoclast survival by prolonging their lifespan, and they also inhibit osteoclast apoptosis. They also induce osteoblasts and osteoclast apoptosis. They decrease bone formation by decreasing the osteoblast differentiation from mesenchymal stem cells. They increase osteoblast apoptosis, and they decrease the synthesis of type 1 collagen fibers, osteocalcin, and other bone matrix proteins. They're also responsible for the increased RANKL ligand action, and they decreases osteoprotegrin molecule. So in this way, the glucocorticoids, the net effect is increase in the bone resorption of the, especially in those patients who are receiving glucocorticoids. The next is the thyroid hormone. So thyroid hormone is very important because it stimulates osteoblastic activity. It also increases osteoclastic number and its activity. It also stimulates chondrocyte and their proliferation. They causes bone elongation at the epiphyseal plate of the long bones. If someone is having abnormality in the thyroid levels, so the degree of bone turnover will be very slow in case of hypothyroidism, and in those who are suffering from hyperthyroidism, there is increased bone turnover. So this was the last slide of my lecture. So do you have any question? You can ask me in the chat box. And I'm also going to take your attendance now. So beta, do you have any question, any query regarding this lecture? And I'm going to share this lecture with Dr. Faryal. So she will share the lecture with you people. Wait a minute. Is everything clear? No, ma'am means there is nothing too clear or you haven't understand anything, Fatma. Okay, okay. Thank you so much, you all. Hope so the lecture have worked, and inshallah we will meet again. So I have taken your attendance. So thank you so much. So we are ending this meeting. Okay. Okay, ji. Thank you, beta. Allah Hafiz.